Hi, my name is Naomi and I'm the creator of Two and or Four, who makes handmade products for your two-legged loved ones and your four-legged loved ones. This is part 2 of a video making a what I call a stroller blanket or a pet bed blanket. And in part 1, which I will link below, we cut out the fleece and Sherpa. You can use whatever materials you want, but this is the sewing of the blanket. So stay tuned. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my needle. I change needles frequently. As you can see, these are the ones are used already. And I just find that it helps with my sewing and threads fraying or breaking. If you find you're breaking or fraying thread frequently, probably you need to change your needle. I am using a 90-14 ballpoint. Because fleece is a thicker fabric, but it is a knit. The Sherpa is pretty thick, but it is also a knit. So I'm going to use a 90-14 needle. I have my machine set at a 3.0 stitch. I would say at least a 3.0 to 3.5 for your fleece, and that works for me. So a 3.0 to 3.5 stitch. The other thing that I do is I have this magnet and I use it. I want a 5/8 seam. So my needle plate here is actually in metric, which works fine for me, but for this purpose, so I find that I always keep this clear little ruler for several reasons by my machine, but a 5/8 stitch actually falls right after my line for the 2 centimeters. So I could put this here and it would be fine. Not everybody has one of these. So the other thing I recommend is that you take a piece of painting tape and you cut off a piece. And what you really want to make sure is that you're marking the area before the presser foot so that your fabric is aligned before it gets to the presser foot. You don't have to worry so much after here because the sewing has already occurred. So I would just lay a piece of painter's tape and I'm bringing it down towards this line. In the front, I'm not so worried about back here because it's too late by the time it reaches there. So this is what I mean that it extends in front of the needle plate. This way you line your fabric up back here, and then by the time it reaches your presser foot, you already have it on the straight. So that tab that we did at the bottom comes in handy because it will help me know I'm going to start here and end here. And I want a 5/8 seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and put this under my presser foot. And I'm going to bring my fabric to be in line with the edge of my tape. All right. And then I, at this point, would have tested and on a scrap piece of fabric to make sure that I'm okay with the settings. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove my first pin. And what I'm going to make sure is as my fabric moves that it stays in line with the tape. And even though my machine does automatically go back and forth, I'm going to go ahead and reverse and then go forward. And now I'm going to make sure my fabric is staying lined up with my tape. And it's not a race. You go at whatever speed you're comfortable at. All right, I'm getting to a pin. I'm going to take it out. I don't like to go over pins. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay. All right, we're getting close to our first edge, and there are several ways that you can decide when you want to turn. But honestly, I just found this is one of the reasons I keep this ruler here, is because I can measure 5/8 up and 5/8 in. And I will put a little mark, and that's where I'm going to turn. And I'm going to just do simple turning. There's always more than one way to do something, and some people like to go across. Honestly, I haven't found it that much different, and for this purpose, for just learning, I think that just doing a straight turn, which is an oxymoron, a right angle turn is what I meant. All right, so I'm getting up to my mark. My needle is down. I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to swivel my fabric around, and I'm going to line it up on my mark. Put my presser foot back down, and I'm going to sew. Again, I make sure my fabric is lined up before it gets to the presser foot. And sometimes the Sherpa wants to peek out. It's just the way it is. Just fix it as best as you can. All right, I'm going to take my little ruler again, and I am going to do 5/8 up and 5/8 in, and I'm going to mark. Once again, I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to turn my fabric and line it up. let go of my presser foot, put my presser foot back down, remove that pin. All right, I'm reaching my tab. So I'm going to go slowly. And I'm gonna back stitch. And that's it. Okay, now you're gonna have to remove your pins. Cut any loose thread. All right, and now just take out all your pins. So now we're going to clip our corners, and all that means is you're going to take your scissor and you're going to go horizontally, 45-degree angle, and making sure that you don't clip your stitching. You want to go close to it, but not so close that you clip it off. So I'm going to get my scissors. All right, so I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to go at a 45-degree angle, and I'm leaving about somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch away from the stitching. Don't go through your stitching. And you do that to all 4 corners. All right. And now we're going to use the hole we left to turn. So put your hand in, grab that corner, and kind of push the corner in, and grab it with your fingers on the inside, and then pull it out. And good old chopstick, or if you have a turning tool, that's great. All right, now we're gonna go get our other corner that we're pulling. I'm gonna put my hand in there. I'm gonna grab that corner again. I'm gonna push on it. grab it on the inside with my fingers and pull it through. So now, again, I'm grabbing, pushing with my index finger that corner, grabbing it in my hand and pulling it through. And now my last corner. Put my hand in, take my index finger, push on it, grab it, and pull through. All right. Now I'll take my turning tool and I will go in there as soon as I find my opening. This one's a little harder because it's almost a square, but we'll find it. There it is. All right, I'll stick my hand in with the turning tool in my hand or the chopstick, and I'll find my corners and just kind of give it a nice push. You know, gently push in to poke the corners back out. Do the other side. All right, I had done that one already. All right, I'm going to do this one. And then I'm going to do the fourth one. All right. Then I'm going to take my hand and my turning tool back out. All right. At this point, you're going to want to lift your tape because now instead of a 5/8 seam allowance, we're going to move to a 7/8 seam allowance. And once again, for me, it's in between. So I'll put my tape down, and we're going to go to the table so that we can work with this a little easier. All right, at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of roll the edges so that you can get a nice clean edge. And then you can stick some pins in. You can approximate the 7/8. You don't have to be totally accurate. And you're just going to want to pin. And this is more, I don't even do this anymore. I just pin only the opening because I want to make sure that I catch it. And I just do it at the machine. But I wanted to make sure you saw it. Now, remember I said that the point of that, one of the points of the tabs is, so we did a 5/8 seam allowance to sew the blanket up, and now we're going to do a 7/8 seam to give it a nice trim. What that does, that tab, is it makes sure that you grab that that you grab fabric there. If I didn't have the tab, the 7/8 would miss the opening, and it would, you know, stay open. Obviously, it's going to stay open like this, but there's going to be a seam in it. And then I just take ladder stitch and clear thread, and I close it up. And I'll show you that. So this is not, the tab's not a must. It's a personal preference. I like it because it just ensures that my opening has two closures. The one that the machine will now do with the top stitching, and the one that I'll do by hand. All right, so I just smooth out my edges. I don't get crazy about it. Like I said, I usually do this right at the machine. I don't even pin anymore. But I wanted to show you. And I just like to make sure that I'm getting a pretty clean edge. All right, I think at this point, and again, I will mark my turns at the machine, but you can pre-mark them. You can do, this is why I love these little clear rulers, is because they have 1/8 measurements, and you can use them both if you're coming in on a seam and you need to go up. So what I mean by that is, for my 7/8, I would just move it in on this edge. I would move it in on this edge and move it up on that edge for my turn. So that would be, I would mark right there. Now, by not trimming the 5/8 seam allowance, what that does is it creates a little edge on the blanket, kind of like a binding, a self-binding. All right, let's go to the machine. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark my first corner where I want to turn. So again, 7/8 from the edge and from the vertical edge, and 7/8 from the horizontal edge. And I'll put a mark. All right. So I have my mark, and here's the thing. I do change for the top. I change my stitch length to 4.0, and I don't have my machine automatically going back and forth at the beginning and the end, because I don't like the look. I actually tie it off. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some thread, and I'm going to pull some bobbin. I'll put it in the back. So my stitch length is now at a 4.0 because I want a longer top stitch length. You have to decide whether you want a contrasting thread. I'm just going to stick with the color I have, and I'm going to put it on my mark. I'm going to drop my presser foot, and I'm going to drop my needle. And again, I'm staying lined up over here. And as I go, I will be pulling and tucking under so that I get a clean edge, or as clean as I can here. All right, so I have it on my mark. I put my presser foot down, I put my needle down, and now I'm just going to make sure to stay along this edge. Okay, I'm coming up on the beginning where I started. So I just want to make sure that I try to meet my starting point as best as I can. Okay. And that's it. And then I'm going to bring that away. I'm going to cut these. And then I am going to knot these by pulling on one of the strands, and you'll see that a little loop forms, and I just take a pin and I stick the pin in the loop, and I bring the thread up. I don't think I'm wearing the right glasses. There we go. And so, and I'll do that, and I'll tie those together in a minute, but let me do the other one. I just pull and bring the loop up. Now, if I had used contrasting thread, I would have done it on the Sherpa side, because then the knotting gets lost inside the depth of the Sherpa, but this would be too hard to see. My eyesight's just not what it used to be. So I just knot it about 3 times, and then I just cut it off. And I'll do the same for the other one. So now the only thing I have left, so you see that tab part where we turn, it's closed. If I didn't have that extra fabric, it wouldn't be closed. But what I'll do now is I'll just take some thread and I will do the very edge with a ladder stitch and close that off. And I do it with clear thread. And that's it. You have your blanket. So the only step left is to do this. All right, so I have this Gutermann invisible thread. They say it's invisible. It's not quite invisible, but close enough. And I will just unwind some off the spool, and I will thread a needle, and then I'll show you how I close that. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of this, and I'm going to then go in the middle and bring up the thread. And then what I do is I just on the top grab a bit and grab a bit of the other side and pull through. Same thing. I'm just staying on the top edge. so that you can barely see that it's even being closed. All I'm going to do is make a knot. And I just make my loop really small, put my needle through, and then I pull to make sure that that loop closed. And then I again, make it really small, put my needle through, pull my thread so that that loop that I just made closes all the way. Same thing again. And I'll do that about 4 or 5 times. Okay, and that's it. And then I cut it. So remember, we didn't cut the selvage edge off, and that's because I'm trying to achieve this bulky, plump edge finish on it, and that just helps make that happen. All right, so here you have it. Obviously, depending on the size of your blanket. This size actually is pretty good for a stroller or a pet bed, and I do make those. So again, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I would love it if you subscribed, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you. All right, now I gotta go vacuum all this Sherpa up off my floor. Have a good day.